Hi guys, my name's Winton. I'm a 2021 World Brewers Cup Champion and I am a Stronghold ambassador. And today I'm going to go through a few of the reasons why I love to roast on the Stronghold and why I continue to roast on the Stronghold for my roastery, Rose Coffee Roasters, and for several Barista and Brewers Cup competitions. We're going to start roasting now. I've got some washed Ethiopian coffee, and at the moment I've done some preheating settings, 175 degrees on the internal, which is an internal temperature probe. I've got the tower drum, which is more of like an environment around the drum, to be 165. It's a little bit cooler. These settings I like to use to start quite hot, and we're going to look for a little bit of a shorter roast, hopefully. My settings are quite high at the start, the hot air 9.5, halogen 9.5, and a good amount of bean agitation. And we're going to keep this fairly consistent through the roast and then drop it towards the end. First the halogen, then the hot air. So, the roaster's ready, I'm ready, you're ready, let's get started. So our green's loading. So some of the reasons why I like to roast this way, especially for my filter coffees, is this shorter roast that's getting a lot of expressiveness. I don't want to go too short, I don't want like a 5-minute roast, but I want something that's probably hitting around the 7 to 9 minute mark in this case. I found that roasting like this gives me quite a bright coffee, quite a lot of vibrancy, really clear flavors, but it's also not too heavy, it's not too sour, but somewhere balanced in the middle. Using quite a high energy in both the hot air and the halogen means that we can get a lot of intensity into the coffee, a lot of energy into the coffee, and then we're going to be able to control that later on in the roast process to get something that is not going to spike too much at first crack. So I'm going to start high and reduce it. I don't like to use any sort of soaking or anything like this. We're just going to get straight into it. On the Stronghold, I think that when we talk about controlling these sorts of variables, we can do it fairly easily, and I don't feel the need to do sort of a soak in this case. So I do like to play with the agitation a little bit, in particularly with more fermenty coffees. When it comes to wash coffees, we can maybe start a little bit lower if we want a little more of that conductive heat, a little bit more body into the coffee, and we can maybe use less agitation, maybe less hot air, or we can use our radiation from the halogen lamps, which is honestly the thing I love about this roasting style. Being able to play with that halogen setting and decide when in the roast I want more of that energy. But for now, I'm going to use this setting 7 for the agitation. This is where I start almost all of my roasts at. If I'm doing an espresso roast, I might start a little bit lower, maybe on 6, and let it get a little bit more contact time with the surface of the drum, and then start to move it up afterwards. The way I see agitation on this machine is it's a little bit like airflow, a little bit, in that when we start to move around more, we have more channels for the air to come through, and we have more chances for the chaff and the smoke and anything to get released and come off and be removed through the cyclone inbuilt into the unit. By having a high agitation setting towards first crack, and at first crack, we end up being able to clear more smoke from the coffee, giving us a nice clean finish in the cup. So I'm pretty happy with how this roast is going. It's still coming up quite nicely. Hopefully we can get around a 8-minute roast, and I'm going to leave both of these settings quite high at the moment. I have found that on some more fermenty coffees, naturals, anaerobic naturals, you might have to go down in the halogen earlier and up in the agitation earlier, as a lot of chaff is being released. But on these wash coffees, it's pretty clean. We shouldn't have any problems with any issues of too much chaff accumulating in the drum and too much temperature, which potentially could cause a fire. But in this case, everything's looking pretty good. So when we're coming up to around 150, I'm going to lower down my halogen. As I can see here that the beans are starting to get a little bit more orange, and we're going to slowly start to taper off in a minute about how we're going to be ending this roast. Having a lot of energy at the start is great for me, and I think we're going to start to come down a little bit more now, and we're going to go up a little bit in our agitation. So now I can see that the coffee is getting thrown around a little bit more. We're going to be having a little bit more airflow come through, so we don't actually even need as much hot energy. So with a higher agitation, I found I need less temperature in the hot air. But this is starting to come together quite nicely. We're going to be looking for a crack probably around 170. So my philosophy or my approach to filter roast and espresso roast are quite different. I know some people like to do an omni roast of both, but for me, I found in my experience that having a filter roast, I do want a bit shorter. I do want it to be a little more explosive, and from the point of first crack to drop temperature, I only want maybe 3 or 4 degrees of increase in temperature. But for my espresso roasts, I need something quite different. I want a longer development time, maybe up to a minute 30, 2 minutes. And I also want to have a total degrees from first crack to dropping of maybe up around 7, 8 degrees. So it's a longer phase in development, but we also have a longer temperature as well, a hotter temperature. If you do an espresso roast as a filter, you're going to get something that does have these roasty notes, which I'm not a fan of. And if you do a filter roast as espresso, it's going to be really hard to control, and it's going to be a little bit more sour. So I like to use the Stronghold's features to make different profiles for espresso and filter. But in this case, it's very much filter focused. So we're approaching first crack here. My hot air is dropping down, so I'm comfortable to leave that as it is for the moment. I'm going to go up in my agitation as we're approaching first crack, and maybe down a little bit in my hot air. Let's have a look how it's going to be. But it's looking good. It's looking quite nice. So I'm going to listen in here for first crack. Here we are. All right, so we're going to mark that now. We're at 752, 171 degrees. So I'm going to look to go my agitation up now, my hot air down again, just to try and taper it out a little bit. And I think I'm going to drop this one at around 8 minutes 30, and hopefully it's going to be not too much hotter than 174 degrees. If I can reach that, then I'm pretty happy. Yeah, that's going to be good now. So the result is something that's quite a light roast, but I didn't catch the full time, 8:27, so around 8 minutes 30. We're not all the way to 8 minutes, we're not all the way past 10 minutes, we're somewhere in the middle there. This should be nice and balanced, should be quite bright, quite expressive. I'm sure this coffee has a lot of floral notes, which is going to be kept, and it's not going to be too roasty as well. So we're going to have something that's quite well developed, but not so developed that it's sort of losing other flavors, losing other properties. It keeps a lot of this brightness, and that's what I love in filter coffee, that's what I love in specialty coffee, and I'm pretty happy with how this went. And for me, working on the Stronghold means that I can modulate and tune all of these characteristics by playing with radiation, playing with conduction, playing with convection. I can monitor everything that I need to, and I can just do the things that I want to do in the coffee thanks to this machine. If I didn't have this control, I just wouldn't be able to do it. So here's my roast, 8 minutes 30 basically, 174 degrees in the end, so it's only about a 3-degree rise after first crack, and everything here is looking pretty good. This is how I roast most of my coffees for Rose Coffee Roasters as well, and this is how I would roast some filter coffees, competition for brewing at home. Everything's pretty much like this, but we just change our settings a little bit to accommodate for different styles of coffee. So I hope this has been helpful. My name's Matt Winton, and I hope you have a great day.